Roll Tide and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds us, don't wait, vaccinate. It's good to see everyone tonight. I'm Roger Hoover alongside Cory Reamer, our engineer Todd Robbins, and also the highlighters in the house once again. Roll Tide to everybody that's here with us at Baumhower's.
Roll Tide, everybody. Hey, there's more excitement than I thought there was going to be coming off this game on Saturday. But glad they're here. We're not all giving up, not giving up on the team just yet. It's still a lot to play for.
Yeah, a lot to play for as the Crimson Tide fall to 1-1 on the season. Texas picks up the win, 34-24. The final score in what turned out to be kind of a crazy night inside Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, it was. I'm not ready to be Chicken Little just yet. You know, the sky's not completely falling, but it was obvious that it was. You know, there's a lot of things to dissect from this game. It was a lot of things that went wrong that we did not execute very well on both sides of the ball and at every single position. You know, it wasn't like it was limited to just one group or one person. It was the defense. It was the offense. You know, it was a great environment. I was there in person, and it was one of the most exciting environments that I've been to in a long time. It was one of the biggest games in Bryant-Denny in a long time, and people showed up. The fan bases showed up, and it made it difficult as much as we possibly could for Texas coming in. But that Texas team is a good team, and they showed it on Saturday. And we've still got a lot of growing pains to go with this team. A lot of young guys that are on this team, and we've got a lot of things to clean up. But I was proud of the way that this team continued to fight, even as bad as it went. Pretty much after the first quarter, there were a lot of things that just didn't go our way, didn't go right. But the team kept responding and making things happen and keeping themselves in the game and got to a point where they're leading in the fourth quarter, you know, and then pulled it within 3 late and had a chance to give the offense the ball back and go out there and potentially take the lead. And unfortunately, we just came up a little bit short. And it was against a team that Texas has been working their tail off to get back to this point. And Steve Sarkisian had that team ready to come into Tuscaloosa and put together a complete game. And you got to give them credit, because those guys looked like what Alabama fans are used to seeing from Alabama teams. When it comes down to the fourth quarter and you've got a lead, you can go out there and take the air out of the ball with your running game and push lines of scrimmage, and they did it the entire game. And especially in that fourth quarter, they really took over and put that game away with, like I said, I think it was over 7 minutes left on the clock when they got the ball and they never came off the field on offense.
And it's not like Alabama got off to a bad start in this ballgame as well. Coach Saban really praised the energy and the focus he saw from this group early on. Yeah, I mean, it was the first quarter we looked great. I thought we came out there, we established the run. We knocked guys off the ball. We were moving the ball down the field. The defense was playing exceptionally well. You know, you get the interception by Milroe early, and then the defense turns around and responds really well. Malachi Moore made a couple of big plays to shut down that drive and hold Texas to a field goal when they start the drive on the Alabama 30-yard line. I thought there was a lot of things that went really well early on in that game, but you always hear Coach Saban talking about starting fast and finishing strong, and we started fast in this game, but unfortunately we just did not finish as strong as we needed to, especially in that fourth quarter when we had chances to really take over the game and put it away. The fan base was there when we scored that late touchdown where we took the lead. You could just hear the excitement in the fans, and usually that's the point in time where the other opposing teams start to realize that this Alabama team is here, and then we're going to go out there and take this game away. And we just weren't able to do it. We didn't execute the little things that we typically do well, that we're accustomed to seeing from these Alabama teams late in the game, and it cost us, unfortunately. And it's an early season blemish, but it's not a season-ending loss. And we've got a lot still left to play for. We haven't started conference play. This is a out-of-conference game against a very good Texas team who surprised a lot of people, including us. We talked last week about the expectations for this game, and there was a lot of talk going into it about their offensive line was not going to be ready to hold up. They struggled last year, didn't look great against Rice last week, but they played really well. Kept Quinn Ewers clean all night. We weren't able to get a sack all night long. He had a lot of time to find open receivers, and he executed extremely well. Texas gets the win again, 34-24, the final score in Tuscaloosa, and we're going to talk all about it coming up on this show, plus what's coming up on Saturday when the Crimson Tide make the trip to Tampa to take on USF. If you'd like to join us, we welcome your phone calls. Give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. The number to dial, 877-202-BAMA. We're just getting started with Crimson Tide Rewind, live at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. A reminder, you can keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. Download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. Again, we welcome your phone calls tonight on Crimson Tide Rewind. The number to dial to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA, and we will go to that Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline now. First to Springfield, Tennessee, where Mark joins us now. Roll Tide, Mark.
Hey, Roll Tide, guys. And I thought you did a nice job putting everything into perspective. As an Alabama fan, my whole life, looking at Coach Saban, we've won 4 titles with 1 loss. We've gone undefeated twice in 09 and then 20. And you don't win. I think it's what you do with this loss, and getting it early in the year. There's not a better one in the country than Coach Saban that can use this to motivate him. My question for you guys, and I'll hang up and listen, is after talking to a cousin of mine who's an SEC official, after Alabama took the lead, it was 3rd and 11 for Texas, and they threw it about 30 yards, and they got an interference call on number 3 for Alabama. He said it was incidental contact, no call should have been made, it was uncatchable, lots of problems with that call. Do y'all, first of all, remember that play?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about Terrion Arnold getting his feet, it looked like they got their feet tangled up and got the flag pulled on them.
Yeah, I know that, when you start talking about officials and, it's like, my dad's, I played the game. I didn't play at the college level, but I know you don't. One play doesn't beat you, and that's always the answer there. But it sure hurts when, I guess there's so much involved, in these games, so much work put into the games, and I just hated to see that for the player, and I hated to see it. You just never know how games are flipped. I think y'all mentioned that Alabama just took the lead, the crowd was in it. You expect Alabama maybe now to come back, and then you get that call. You just never know, I guess, is my point. And so I say for all the Tide fans, let's not give up on them. I think we got a great chance to move forward, and look forward to this Saturday. And appreciate you guys and what y'all do.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike. It was it's a tough call for sure. But you watch the replay, and there's definitely contact, and it's going to be up to the referee for the discretion of throwing that flag. But a lot of times, if you've got a DB that's running side by side with a receiver, and they're both tracking the ball, and they get tangled up, if they're both looking back for the ball and they get tangled up, then that's usually the way the incidental contact is kind of, you let it play out that way. But if you're trailing a guy and you get some hands on them and feet get tangled up, it's hard for a referee not to throw that ball, throw that flag at that point in time. We're back to the old ways. Flags coming flying at us here at Baumhower's right now from
Johnny and the highlighters for again supplying the penalty flag. We thought we weren't going to do this year.
We thought after the first game with only 2 penalties, it was we were going to be escaping this. But unfortunately, you go with 10 penalties for 90 yards on Saturday, and it's not like we just had some offsides here and there, or some small penalties. It seemed like a lot of the penalties that we had were major penalties. Whether it was when we had Texas backed up up against the goal line, not a lot of room to breathe. It was a time for us to put pressure on them. We get the face mask call, gives them 15 yards, gets them out from their end zone, gives them a lot more space to operate. The 2 pass interference calls, one on the wide receiver pass, and then the one that Mike just referenced there. Towards the end of the game, it just continued to extend drives. And that's what Coach Saban talked about in his press conference today, was we just didn't do the things that were normally, the mistakes that were made seemed just costly. They weren't just little mistakes here and there we could overcome. Every mistake that happened, whether it be the flags or penalties or whatever, it was in moments that we really needed to not have those, because they extended drives from 3rd downs or just kept the plays alive, and you saw Texas took advantage of pretty much all of them.
Yeah, 10 penalties for 90 yards on Alabama on the night. Let's go back to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. Again, that number 877-202-BAMA. We go here to Birmingham, where Mike joins us now. Roll Tide, Mike.
Roll Tide, guys. Roll Tide. And God bless the United States of America on this 9/11 day here. Bama made a valiant effort on Saturday. I guess Texas were out for blood from last year because thought they had the game won. Bama pulled it out on the last-second field goal. And Milroy, he played as best he could. He played as best they could. Our defense made some mistakes. Both sides of the ball, penalties on both sides of the ball. But this thing we can iron those wrinkles out. We got South Florida on Saturday. I expect to get a big win down in Tampa, Florida. I expect them to win the rest of these games. I expect them to just, and take themselves into the SEC championship game against Georgia. I'm still optimistic for this Alabama team. Quite optimistic. We'll get back in the championship picture before you know it, guys.
I like the sound of that. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike. It's, like we said, it's just it's early in the season. You don't ever want to have losses to really get this team motivated to fix a lot of mistakes, but you don't want to have losses at all. That's kind of become the standard that Alabama set. This is what they're expected to do, but sometimes you just run into a team that just plays better, and that's what it felt like on Saturday. There is a lot of tape to learn from. There's a lot of things to go back for all sides of the ball, for every position group to look in the mirror and see what it was that they didn't do right, what we can get better at. We've got a lot of young guys that had some mistakes or just some, didn't execute the way that Coach Saban and the staff expected them to. So we've got South Florida this weekend, and we go down there. They've got a good offense that we're going to have to get ready for, but then conference play starts right after that with Ole Miss, and it's going to be a tough stretch. So we better grow up pretty quickly because the West is still wide open. And you look around the West, and it's kind of an odd thing that's going on right now, but every team that was talked about from the West that was expected to contend for this SEC, to make it to Atlanta for the SEC West, the SEC Championship, LSU goes down early to Florida State. This weekend, Texas A&M loses to Miami. We lose to Texas. It's wide open. There's still, obviously, there's not that team that's separated themselves in this conference yet. Auburn goes and gets a big win against Cal on Saturday. So, still a lot to play for, still a lot to work on. And I imagine that Coach Saban, you heard him talk about it today, that this is the kind of game that you're going to really see the character of this team, of how they respond.
Again, we invite your phone calls to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA. We'll continue with more Crimson Tide Rewind coming up next. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Three wides to the far side. Single setback to the right of the quarterback. Milroe gets a low snap. Looks left. He'll throw this one long. Has a man behind the D, and it's caught. Caught by Isaiah Bond. And that's what you need to loosen things up a little bit right there.
Tonight's first question is brought to you by Alabama 811 to help prevent injuries, outages, and the loss of life. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Before you dig, it is free, it is simple, and it's the law. Roger Hoover alongside Cory Reamer. Let's go right back to that Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline and say hello to Jackson, who gives us a call from Adamsville. Roll Tide, Jackson. Jackson, are you with us?
Throw screen passes on defense. Why don't we blitz sometime? Why don't we have play that that they don't normally use, like a trick play?
I think he was getting at what was the defense not doing? Why were we not bringing more blitz packages? It didn't seem like we were able to get home with just 3- and 4-man fronts on Saturday. Weren't able to affect Quinn Ewers. And we had a lot of times we were dropping 7- and 8 men in coverage, and he was able to keep a clean pocket and find open guys. And we had unfortunately, they had some guys that were running wide open. It wasn't like it was having to squeeze in tight windows a lot of the times. And I think that's definitely something that you got to go back and look at is we got a guy we shut down. We played the run, I thought, pretty well, and we've had seasons before where we're blitz happy, going in there and try to put a lot of pressure on there on opposing quarterbacks. And whatever we were doing on Saturday, it seemed like their offensive line was picking up extremely well, and we weren't really bringing a lot of extra guys. They have such a good receiving group and we talked about it last week on this show. I think there was just a lot of respect for those guys of getting behind the defense defense, and they showed that they could. They had the speed to do it and found ways to get open, and I think that shows that from the game plan's perspective of not going out there and trying to blitz and putting guys on islands. Let's give some guys some help on the edges, on the corners, and unfortunately it still kind of bit us a little bit. We had some guys that were running behind.
Thank you so much for the call, Jackson. You know, PNC Bank is pleased to be back this season with the PNC Achievers throughout the collegiate year. PNC Bank will salute both academic and athletic excellence through its proud partnership with the Crimson Tide. If you'd like to join us on the show tonight, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202. Bama is the number to dial. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
For Will Reichard. Of course, he had a 52-yard field goal against Texas a year ago. Here's the kick. It's on the way, end over end, and it is good. Another lengthy kick by Reichard against the Texas Longhorns, and he draws Alabama to within 13-9.
Solid performance by Will Reichard. 3 made field goals, his first 3 makes of the season, and again a 51-yarder to help Alabama on Saturday against Texas. If you'd like to be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, submit your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Just look up Crimson Tide Sports Network on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, and you can also go to AL.com, your source for SEC sports. Cory Reamer, let's talk quarterback play for Alabama. We saw Jalen Milroe go 14 of 27 passing, 255 yards, had the 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, it's the last 2 games that we've had, he started against, was it Texas A&M last year, at Middle Tennessee State last week, but against Texas and Texas A&M, he's had 5 touchdowns, but also has had 5 interceptions. And, that's the thing that Coach Saban talked about going into this season is we've got to figure out a way, who's going to be the guy that eliminates those mistakes, eliminates those errors, those costly mistakes like turnovers, that's going to give us the best chance to win. But I will say, it's not all on Milroe. The guy made a lot of plays last week with his feet. We saw the athletic ability that he has, and he did it again on Saturday. There's a lot of times when the pocket collapsed very quickly on him, and he had to make something happen with his feet. And there was some pretty good coverage downfield from this Texas secondary, and a lot of that was because they only had to rush 3 and 4 to really push the pocket. They had 7, 8 guys that were dropping back in coverage. It's tough as a quarterback, especially when you can't establish the run, and we didn't do that we did it early in the first quarter. We were able to move the ball pretty well, but then we ended up not having the same success from then on, and that really hinders the passing game. So it makes it tough on a quarterback to have to throw against those guys that are dropping in coverage, that many guys dropping in coverage. But I thought he made a lot of impressive plays. Unfortunately, the mistakes that he made were costly. The first interception, throwing out into a squat corner, and you heard the interview with the corner that made the interception, that first one after the game. It seems like they had a kind of a picked up on that play call early in the game, and they went back to it. Alabama's offense went back to it and seemed like he was able to bait him into the throw. But you got to see that. As a quarterback, you've got to see that there's a guy sitting out there before you make that throw. You got to be able to read the defense. And the second one really was probably the nail in the coffin for us. And unfortunately, it was a single-man route. There was only one guy that was out there running a route. And Texas, you saw the safety immediately break over and just break in front of the ball and made a play on it. And he's got to be able to read that defense a little bit faster. That's something that he's going to have to continue to improve on as the season goes on, being able to see the field, realizing what he's got out in front of him. When you've only got one man that's running a route and you see he's covered or there's more guys that are moving over towards him, you just got to tuck it and run and move on to the next play. That's what Coach Saban talks about. We want every drive to end in a kick in some form or fashion, whether it's a punt, a field goal, or PAT, and we've got to eliminate those mistakes that were made on Saturday. So, but I thought he did a lot of things well. He throws the deep ball extremely well. We saw that. He's got a heck of an arm, and he moves around the pocket very well. He's able to break away from some defenders that are in the backfield, avoid getting sacked. But it's everything that's in between those two things that we've got to see him improve on. The intermediate throws, finding guys open, reading defenses, knowing where to go with the ball, and trying not to, telegraph where he's looking. And that seemed to be the case on that second interception. He was kind of eyeballing the guy and still made that pass. So he's a good leader. He's a guy that wants to be successful in this position, and I know he's going back and watching this film and trying to learn as much as he can, getting together with Tommy Rees and figuring out what the game plan is going forward. How can he get better each and every week? And I expect him to. I mean, he's a competitor, and you can tell he's out there. He wants to lead this team. He learned a lot from Bryce Young. Hopefully we'll see some vast improvement from this week into the next.
We'll continue talking about Alabama's offense when we come back in just a moment, as we're broadcasting live tonight from Baumhower's Victory Grille. That is completely ready for football, especially with Monday Night Football coming up tonight. Fun and great food with their special Big Game Headquarters menu. Get hooked on their delicious all-new lemon garlic salmon and the new char-grilled flat iron Callaway steak with the signature shrimp etouffee. Baumhower's legendary fun and legendary food. Back with more Crimson Tide Rewind next. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Man in motion, goes to the far side. Here's Milroe, loads up, looks down the left side. He's got a man there, open in the end zone. Touchdown, Jermaine Burton. That will be 49 yards.
If you'd like to join tonight's show, submit your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, AL.com, your source for SEC sports. We're continuing to talk about Alabama against Texas from Saturday, and we just talked about the play of quarterback Jalen Milroe, and you talked about how it's not all on his shoulders, some of the ways the offense came up a little bit short. How about the offensive line? What did you see from that group on Saturday?
Yeah, it was, like we said, early on, it seemed like they were able to push the line of scrimmage and really held their own. And then it just seemed like Texas was able to figure out how to really just when you could get pressure in collapsed pockets with only 3 or 4 man pressures, which they did a number of times. And I think they ended up giving up, 5 sacks? I think there was 9 tackles for loss. Those things were coming. I think one of them was a 3-man front on those sacks, and then a lot of them were on the 4-man. Not a lot of them were because of bringing extra guys in blitz packages. So there's a lot to clean up. I thought Jaden Proctor played well early on, and then it seemed like he was opening the floodgates, turning his hips a little early. It's probably a lot to do with his technique of why that pocket kept getting collapsed. You don't want your offensive line turning and opening their hips right from the jump when they're setting back for pass block. And it seemed like the couple plays that I noticed that we were getting a lot of pressure, that's what was going on. So as a freshman, you're throwing a lot out there for a guy in a big game like this, putting up a defensive line that I was actually very impressed by from Texas. And that was one of the strengths of their team coming into this game. And they lived up to the expectations, and they came after them and knew that they had a freshman sitting there playing left tackle. But we talked about Sweat in the middle for Texas at nose tackle at 365 pounds. Really gave McLaughlin a lot of trouble. I mean, you saw the collapse happening from all sides. And we saw Milroe have to make a lot of plays with his feet to avoid the pressure. You can do a lot of things with your game plan that can help eliminate that, slow those guys down to give your offensive linemen some breaks. But one of the things that's on them is being able to run the football. The more effectively that you can run the football, the less they're sitting there pinning their ears back and trying to get after it in obvious passing down situations. It opens up the play action. And when we just lost the ability to really impose our will in the running game, you saw them really just coming after Milroe. So there's definitely some room for improvement. This is a group that took a lot of pride in the offseason. They heard all the talk from everybody about how this group's got to be the one that steps up and improves. They've got to get back that dog mentality, and it still remains to be seen. That Tyler Booker's been out there leading the charge of saying this is a group that's going to lead this team, and we got to see it. Unfortunately, it was probably not one of their better games so far this season, early in the season, but like we said, a lot of time to go out and correct the mistakes and figure out how to get that fixed.
It all starts this week with Alabama at USF. We'll hear Coach Saban talk about that when we return in just a few moments. The Alabama Department of Public Health reminds all Tide fans to stay up to date with all recommended vaccinations. Flu season is here, and COVID-19 continues to affect our community. Don't wait, vaccinate. Again, we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, when we return. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Again, a low snap. Picked up by Milroe. He'll throw, and it's caught by Nyblack. He'll make the grab down to the 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Alabama. 39 yards. 39 yards.
If you have a taste for winning, Dreamland Barbecue offers the triple threat. Dine in, carry out, and catering. Dreamland Barbecue. Ain't nothing like them nowhere. Proud supporter of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Well, Coach Saban met earlier today with the media in Tuscaloosa to really kick off USF week. And here is a sample of the press conference that we heard from Coach Saban as he looks ahead to what's coming up on Saturday between Alabama and South Florida.
You know, South Florida is got a first-year coach, and you know, they're moving the ball and scoring points. And, you know, it's not about necessarily always who we play. It's how we technically execute against the team that we play so we have a chance to be successful. It's a road game. It's our first road game. They've got some good players. They've got a pretty good quarterback. They play hard on defense. So everyone's capable. But it's about you playing to your standard, us playing to our standard, and trying to play the kind of football that we need to play so that we have a chance to be more successful on a more consistent basis.
And that was the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, meeting with the media earlier today in Tuscaloosa. This season, you can stay cool with a free non-alcoholic drink of your choice when you purchase a limited edition Alabama Yeti. These vintage Yeti cups are only available at Bryant-Denny. Elevate your game day with Yeti. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Kendrick Law wide left. In tight on the right is Jermaine Burton. Here's Milroe looking, rolls left and throws. Complete for a two-point conversion. Complete to Isaiah Bond for a two-point conversion.
Crimson Tide getting ready for South Florida coming up on Saturday, and the prescription for success is presented by Payless Drugs. Payless Drugs, your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations in Birmingham. Payless can handle your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at miningpharmacy.com. The Crimson Tide trying to bounce back after a 10-point loss against Texas on Saturday. What is that prescription for success? First of all, on the practice field this week in Tuscaloosa to get ready for Saturday.
Yeah, the key is going to be you got to bounce back after this, and you got to refocus. And you heard Coach Saban talk about in this press conference that he expects this. He'd be surprised if this team doesn't respond well during this week of practice to get ready for this next week. And he said a lot of those things throughout the offseason about how he's been so impressed with the character of this team. They showed up to the game on Saturday ready to play. It's not like he felt like we were not excited or had the enthusiasm or had bad weeks of practice or the leadership wasn't there. And he expects this team to come back this week and get ready for a South Florida team that's it's going to be a tough test. And it's always hard to bounce back from a tough loss like this. But I think that this, from what Coach Saban, how he always says what these guys show up and they work hard, they pay attention, they're ready to go, they're eager to get better. So that's number one thing. The other thing is we've just got to clean up the mistakes that we made. Number one being the penalties, which continued to bite us this week, after having a clean game last week. And the other one's the big plays. You just look at what happened on Saturday. Out of the 450 or so yards that Texas put up on offense, there was about 240 of it came on 6 big plays of 20 yards or more. And all of them were crucial. Most of them led to points to some degree. And that's one thing that when we have our goals going into the season, every single thing that we do against every team, one of the goals is no big plays. And giving up 6 of them, that's going to be a game changer. You got to get off the field on third down was another big one that I saw on Saturday that we've got to clean up. You got to get the defense off the field. Stop giving them chances to extend the drives. And so there's just a number of things that we could probably talk about from Saturday because, like we said earlier on in this show, it was at every single position group. It wasn't just one. It was a team effort of where we can improve. And now we're going to find out what this team's really made of going into Tampa, go play South Florida, and then conference season begins right after that. And like we said earlier, there's still a lot to play for. So can this team rebound and stay in the game and not get defeated from this tough loss?
Crimson Tide taking on USF, a team that has a new head coach, Alex Golesh, who we saw last year as the offensive coordinator at Tennessee. So very much a Josh Heupel-style offense, an offense maybe that will be good to look at this week because you have Lane Kiffin with Ole Miss, Tennessee again down the road.
Yeah, we've got plenty of teams on the schedule that are going to be running the similar style offense, so this will be a good test. And given the fact that we just talked about the big plays that we gave up on Saturday, this is going to be a very quick turnaround to see if this defense and Kevin Steele can put together a game plan to eliminate those. You know, what I was impressed with on Saturday was when we were able to get pressure, and we talked about it last week, and I think Quinn Ewers was 0 for 7 on passes of 20 yards or more against Rice. You know, and then we come into this week thinking we got to affect the quarterback, get his timing off to make him throw some errant throws. And when we were able to get a guy in his face or just move him out of his spot in the pocket, a lot of times the throws went over the head, drop balls. They just weren't on target, and they weren't able to convert those throws. And we just didn't get enough of that on Saturday. So I imagine that Coach Saban and Kevin Steele and that staff are going to go look and see how are we able to affect the quarterback. We're going to have to do more of that. A lot of games this season, and it starts this weekend with a quarterback who I think has already put up close to 900 yards in passing. So you know they're going to try to air it out and play fast. And we also saw that from Texas. Up-tempo offense, a lot of pre-snap motions, trying to confuse the defense, and they were successful in doing it. So we've got to get those guys out there knowing exactly what they have to do, communicate effectively to where they know their responsibilities and are able to play as fast as they possibly can.
Leading receiver for the Longhorns on Saturday night was Jatavian Sanders, who was their tight end, 5 catches for 114 yards. The longest play he had was 50 yards. What made him really tough to cover? Because, again, Alabama is going to see some elite tight ends down the way.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't cover him. There was a couple times, a lot of those big plays, he was just running by himself right in the middle of the field, especially on that 50-yarder that set up the touchdown from Mitchell right after that. And the breakdown in coverage was kind of surprising because they weren't running 5 receiver sets. You know, it was 3 guys that were out in the route combinations, and I don't know if it was a miscommunication between the safeties and the backers or what was going on, but a lot of times you had that tight end that was just streaking across the middle with nobody around him, and he was able to run free before anybody was able to converge to try to get him down on the ground. So, you know, you got Caleb Downs back there who's going to be a great player for us. You could see some of the youth that he had with his eye discipline on a couple of those passes, and he's aggressive. He likes to come up and play in the box and make tackles. Sometimes that kind of bit him where receivers were running behind him. And so that's going to be the biggest thing is going out this week and figuring out what was the miscommunication between the backers and the safeties and the corners that caused those guys to run wide open. Because it's easy to get back there and just throw it to a guy who doesn't have anybody around him. It's kind of like, you know, we call them air routes. It's like 7-on-7. You just go out there and nobody's around. It's a lot easier to complete those balls. And Quinn Ewers and Jatavian Sanders had that kind of a game on Saturday for a couple big plays.
Again, the Crimson Tide looking to bounce back coming up this Saturday against USF. We'll talk more about that when we wrap up this edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. It's presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. They remind Bama fans, don't wait, vaccinate. For more information, visit alabamapublichealth.gov/IMN. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama is brought to you by Yellowhammer Brewing. Hit your stride with a refreshing Yellowhammer beer. Now at Bryant-Denny Stadium and stores near you. Well, next up for the Crimson Tide will be the South Florida Bulls in Tampa. Game being played at Raymond James Stadium, the home of the NFL's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 11:30 a.m. We will start our broadcast across the network, and the kickoff coming your way at 2:30 p.m. Central. The away broadcast on the Crimson Tide Sports Network presented by Payless Drugs. Alabama going on the road to a non-Power 5 opponent. A little bit different. Coach Saban talked about it today at his press conference, part of a 2-for-1 with USF. So we'll get to see the Bulls here soon in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be uncommon for us to go on the road for a non-Power 5 conference like this, but South Florida is a team that historically has been a very tough game as a non-Power 5 opponent. And especially when you go to Tampa, it's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. Those guys know how to throw the football around. It's going to be a tough test for us. But the biggest thing for us is we gotta look in the mirror. This is no different than any other week, and you got to treat this game just like you did this Texas game. You got to prepare for it, because the last thing you want to do is go down to Tampa and still have a little lag from this Texas game and let it affect the outcome of this next one. The most important one is always the next one. We've got a conference play that begins after that, but we got to figure out a way to bounce back, play some clean football, and I imagine you're going to get to see a lot of different guys playing in this game, and that's the goal. Is you want to go in there and take care of business early and get a lot of guys reps before we come back in town for Ole Miss. But these South Florida Bulls, Blake Barnett was the guy that transferred. We had at Alabama. He transfers to South Florida and leaves Tuscaloosa, goes down there and plays. They're a real program, and if this team doesn't treat them like one, it opens you up for potential surprises. I mean, we saw some games this past weekend. Appalachian State really puts it to North Carolina. North Carolina escapes with a victory, but those games are the types of ones that sneak up on you. And, that North Carolina team had just beat a big rival in South Carolina the week before. The players, if you find out the true discipline of these players, if they can really stay focused and put this, 24-hour rule Coach Saban always talks about, whether you win or you lose, you forget about it, you got to move on. We're going to see if these guys have the ability to do it.
About a minute left, but are you surprised? Maybe we've gotten so spoiled by all the SEC victories and non-conference play over the years. Have you been a little bit surprised by what we've seen for the league?
I think there's a number of different things that may be causing this. I think there's a lot more parity across college football with the transfer portal, and you're starting to see it. Maybe the depth isn't as what it used to be for teams like Alabama and Georgia and LSU. They've still got top-tier talent. It's just that you lose guys that you've been working on developing, and they're finally they should be falling into a role that contributes to this team, but before they get to that point, they're leaving and going somewhere else to play immediately. They don't, and I think that's causing a lot of the problems in terms of the powerhouses. You're seeing a lot of these other teams that are picking up talents from each one. But I think we're like 3-5 as against out of conference teams so far as an SEC. So it is shocking to see LSU, Texas A&M, and us in the West that have already gone down with losses. It's uncommon to see.
Florida to Utah.
Yeah,
too.
Florida to Utah. So there's a lot of them across the board. It just seems that there's a lot of teams that are out there that are picking up scraps from teams, guys that want to play earlier. They're able to bounce around and play immediately, and you're starting to see some of the effects of it, it seems like.
Cory, enjoyed it tonight. We look forward to talking to you on game day, and we'll be back here with Crimson Tide Rewind next week. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, Roger. Appreciate it.
And that will do it for this edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. It's presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, live here from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. For Michael Henderson and Jerry Kelly back at our Learfield studios, plus engineer Todd Robbins and Cory Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover saying thank you so much for listening to Crimson Tide Rewind, again live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Until next time, Roll Tide, everyone.